Imagine this. She's sitting across from you, confident, beautiful, smiling that smile she's used 1,000 times to get her way. She thinks she's running the show. She thinks you're the next one in line to fall under her spell. And maybe you are. But not for the reasons she believes, because what she doesn't know, what she's about to find out, is that you've been pulling the strings the whole time. Most men go through life chasing women, trying to win them over, trying to deserve them. They change their tone, their posture, even their principles just to keep a woman interested. And the worst part? They don't even realize how much control they've given up in the process. They think being nice, being agreeable, being the good guy is the path to seduction. And then they wonder why she loses interest, why she pulls away, why she starts talking to someone else who treats her nothing like they do. But here's the truth that most men will never hear, let alone accept. The more a woman feels like she's in control of the dynamic, the less attraction she feels over time. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to figure out. The less room she has to fantasize, to chase, to invest. Because when she thinks she's in control, she's not seduced. She's just entertained. Now here's where it gets powerful. When you shift the energy just slightly, when you flip the script in a way that's so subtle she doesn't even notice it at first, that's when she starts to feel something deeper. She begins to wonder why she's the one thinking about you. Why she's the one rereading your last message. Why she's the one dressing up a little more before meeting you. It's because you did something. You changed something that most men are too afraid or too unaware to even consider. And that's what this video is about. We're not here to play games. We're here to learn the rules of a game that's been going on for thousands of years. A game that authors like Robert Greene exposed in The Art of Seduction, that legends like Neil Strauss decoded in The Game, that modern behavioral psychology has been confirming over and over again. Human beings are wired for power dynamics, and attraction is nothing without tension, uncertainty, and the illusion of control. Over the next minutes, we're going to break this down like never before. You'll discover what it actually means to take the lead without ever chasing. You'll learn how to make her feel intrigued without having to perform, how to subtly withdraw attention in ways that make her invest even more, and most importantly, how to create the kind of psychological and emotional experience that flips the control dynamic without ever being aggressive or obvious. This is not about manipulation. This is about understanding how attraction works in the female mind, and how a man who knows what he's doing can shift the entire interaction without saying a word. You'll understand why certain men drive women wild without ever having to prove themselves, and you'll learn how to step into that level of presence and power by making a few key shifts, starting now. Let's start with a truth most men never want to admit. Women test. Not because they're cruel, not because they're trying to destroy your self-esteem, but because they're wired to feel before they trust. A woman will challenge your confidence. She'll flirt with being disrespectful. She'll play hard to get. She'll try to get a reaction out of you, not because she wants to push you away, but because your reaction tells her exactly where your emotional strength lies. And here's the mistake most guys make. They respond to those tests by trying to fix them. They start explaining themselves, over-apologizing, asking what's wrong, or worse, getting angry and defensive. And just like that, the power dynamic flips again, right back to her. Because now she knows, she can trigger you, she can throw you off balance, and if she can do that, then deep down, you're still trying to earn her approval. But the men who know what they're doing, who've read people like Mystery, who've absorbed the principles of evolutionary psychology, who understand that seduction is an emotional journey, not a performance. They don't respond to the test. They hold. They maintain their frame. And that's the moment when everything changes. Because when you don't react to the game, when you don't flinch at her little challenges, when you stay grounded, calm, amused, she starts to feel it. Not just consciously, but on a visceral level. That pull, that curiosity, that question in the back of her mind. Why doesn't this guy react like the others? That's when control starts to shift. And the best part? You didn't have to do anything loud, flashy, or manipulative. You just had to be still, masculine, unshakable. Now, before we go deeper into how you flip that control dynamic without her even realizing it, here's something that separates amateurs from the masters of seduction: the power of calibrated indifference. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about creating just enough emotional distance that she feels the pull of your absence more than the comfort of your presence. And it starts with one simple principle. If she always knows where she stands with you, she stops thinking about you. Most guys reveal their entire emotional hand way too soon. They text too often, they overshare, they reply too fast, they're too available. And yes, they may think they're communicating or being real, but what they're really doing is removing all mystery. And the moment a woman knows exactly how you feel, exactly what your next move is, exactly how much she means to you, she gets bored. Now I know, this sounds counterintuitive. We've been taught that openness and honesty are the keys to connection. And sure they are, once there's already attraction. But in the early stages, when tension is building, when the chase is still alive, when her mind is still deciding whether or not you're worth the emotional investment, mystery is everything. So how do you create that mystery? You stop over-explaining. You stop announcing your intentions. You stop trying to validate yourself with attention. And you start operating from this mindset. I know what I bring. I don't need her to know it yet. That changes everything, because now your attention becomes a reward, not a given. Your validation becomes rare, which makes it valuable. And most importantly, she starts leaning in, trying to figure you out, trying to unlock your mind, trying to regain the control she thought she had when this all started. And that, right there, is when you know the power dynamic has shifted. Now here's where most men get it completely wrong. They think taking control means dominating the conversation, interrupting, showing off, or trying to impress her with status or success. But here's the paradox. The real power is in your restraint. The man who doesn't need to prove himself is the man she feels the deepest pull toward. Not because he's trying to seduce her, but because he isn't. And that's exactly what makes him different. Let's talk about presence. Not just physical presence, but emotional stillness. The ability to occupy space without rushing to fill the silence, to hold eye contact without tension, to speak slowly, deliberately, without chasing a reaction. Most guys talk too much. They fill the air with nervous words, jokes, compliments, hoping to win her over. And in doing so, they betray the most attractive quality a man can have: composure. A woman feels drawn to a man who can sit in silence and let her come to him emotionally. Why? Because it signals that you're internally fulfilled, that you don't need her reaction to feel validated, that your confidence isn't borrowed, it's built. And that kind of masculine stillness creates a void that pulls her into your frame. That's when she leans in. That's when she starts asking the questions. That's when you know she's no longer evaluating you, she's investing. Now let's go deeper. One of the most subtle ways you flip the dynamic, without ever forcing it, is through what I call emotional pacing. This means that instead of matching her rhythm, her emotional highs and lows, her enthusiasm or her silence, you stay constant. You become the grounding energy. If she's playful, you're calm. If she's dramatic, you're unshaken. If she gets quiet, you don't fill the gap. You let it breathe. This isn't about being cold. It's about being anchored. Here's the secret. Emotional pacing lets her calibrate to your energy. And that's when she starts to crave the certainty of your presence. Not because you're nice or saying the right words, but because you feel like a man she can't quite decode. A man who doesn't lose himself just because she changes her mood or throws a curveball. You become the fixed point in a chaotic world. And that stability is seductive on a level most guys can't even comprehend. Let me give you an example. Think about James Bond. Not the action hero, but the energy. He's never rushing. He's never chasing. He's observing, responding, and always in control. Not because he's louder or flashier than anyone else, but because he's the least reactive man in the room. That's the kind of presence that makes a woman feel like she's with a man who doesn't need to convince her of anything, because he knows she'll feel it. And now we arrive at something most seduction coaches don't talk about enough: the power of strategic absence. Not ghosting, not disappearing out of fear, but creating intentional space that lets her feel the contrast between having your attention and missing it. When you're always around, always texting, always available, she gets used to your presence. It becomes neutral, predictable. Even if she likes you, her emotional brain starts to dull the experience. But when you introduce moments of silence, when you go quiet for a day without explanation, when you don't reply right away, when you make her wait without telling her why, her mind starts to race. And more importantly, her emotions get activated. Now she's wondering. Now she's checking her phone. Now she's looking for clues. Because that little gap created a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Here's the key. Women don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with how they feel about themselves around you. And if you can create emotional rhythms, ups and downs, closeness and distance, tension and release, you build the kind of internal story that she can't stop replaying. That's how you lead without controlling. Because real control in seduction is not about domination. It's about influence. It's about understanding how subtle shifts in your behavior, timing, silence, tone, pacing, completely rewire the dynamic between you and her. And when done right, she doesn't even realize that you're leading the dance. She just feels more intrigued, more invested, more emotionally exposed. This is why confident men don't overcorrect when something doesn't go as expected. They don't chase when she pulls away. They don't get flustered when she flirts with someone else, because they know that true power is always invisible at first. That's what makes it magnetic. Now, let's touch on something advanced: reverse framing. This is when you subtly imply that she is the one being evaluated, not arrogantly, not disrespectfully, but with standards. When you communicate, verbally or non-verbally, that not every beautiful woman impresses you, not every flirty text moves you, not every seductive glance wins you over, she starts to question her own leverage. And that's when everything flips. Because now she's wondering, am I good enough for him? Why isn't he reacting? What does he see in me or not see? This doesn't require saying anything explicit. Sometimes it's just the way you pause before answering her question, or the way you respond to her flirting, not with flattery but with curiosity, or the way you hold her gaze just a little longer than necessary, then look away like you're still deciding. That kind of subtle reversal flips the script completely. She's no longer the one observing you. Now she's under your gaze. And that psychologically is one of the most powerful triggers of attraction. Because the moment a woman feels like she has to earn your attention, she becomes emotionally engaged in the outcome. And that's exactly what we want. Let's now talk about something even more powerful, and yet almost always overlooked. It's the use of intentional unpredictability. Predictability kills attraction. When a woman can map out your next move before you make it, she mentally checks out. Not because she's cruel, but because the emotional system inside her thrives on novelty, uncertainty, and curiosity. And this doesn't mean acting like a clown or being inconsistent. It means learning to interrupt her emotional patterns just enough to keep her guessing, just enough to keep her emotionally invested in figuring you out. Here's how this works in practice. One day, you text her in the evening and have a deep, engaging conversation that lingers in her mind. The next day, nothing. No explanation, no apology. You're just silent. Then, instead of checking in like she expects, you wait 2 days and then drop a message that's different in tone. Maybe it's playful, maybe it's a question, maybe it's something unexpected about a conversation you had earlier. The key here is not chaos, it's contrast. The brain is addicted to patterns interrupted. That's why roller coasters are exciting. That's why people fall for emotionally unavailable partners. That's why movies use plot twists. When you can deliver emotional contrast, tension, then release, connection, then distance, silence, then presence, you hook her brain into an experience she has to resolve. And this makes you addictive. Now, I want you to understand something deeper. Women don't want to control the man they're most attracted to. They want to surrender to him, but only if they believe he's capable of leading, emotionally and psychologically. And that surrender doesn't come through persuasion. It comes through alignment with a masculine frame. A man who knows where he's going, who doesn't need her approval to move forward, who doesn't hesitate when it's time to make a decision. A man who can say no without guilt, who isn't afraid to disappoint if it means keeping his integrity intact. This is rare, which is why women test for it constantly. You say you're busy, she'll see if you really are. You say you're not interested in games, she'll play one to check. You say you're emotionally stable, she'll provoke a reaction just to see if you crack, and most guys fail right there. They either overreact, over-explain, or try to smooth things over too quickly. But a man in control doesn't flinch. He doesn't argue. He doesn't justify. He simply holds the line. Calm. Grounded. Unbothered. And when she realizes she can't rattle your emotional frame, she stops testing and starts trusting. Another technique very few talk about, but that's extremely powerful when applied correctly, is micro-withdrawal. Most men are either too present or completely absent. They don't understand the art of subtle withdrawal. Here's how it works. After an emotionally intense moment, whether it's physical intimacy, a deep conversation, a night out together, you don't follow up immediately. You pull back, just slightly. You let her sit in the afterglow of that experience without reinforcement. This creates a craving. Her brain starts scanning for the next hit of dopamine. She replays the memory. She reads the energy between the lines. And most importantly, she initiates. Maybe it's a message. Maybe it's an Instagram story. Maybe it's just a like on your post. But the moment she reaches out, the dynamic has shifted. Now she's playing your game. And when you respond, you do it on your terms. Calm, measured, without urgency. You're not ignoring her. You're not punishing her. You're simply reminding her, without saying it, that your attention is not a constant. It's earned. And that makes it irresistible. There's another layer to this that's more psychological. It's what I call controlled vulnerability. You don't need to act like a stone wall. In fact, showing small flashes of depth, pain, ambition, or even past wounds in the right moment can be incredibly seductive. But here's the key. Vulnerability must come from a position of strength, not a plea for sympathy. When you tell a story about something that shaped you, you do it without needing her reaction. You share it as a man who's processed it, who's learned from it, who's standing taller because of it. And that contrast between masculine resilience and emotional openness creates a powerful emotional magnetism. It makes her feel close to you without you chasing closeness, because now she's investing in your story, not just your persona. And that story, the way you reveal it piece by piece, never too soon, never too much, is what makes you unforgettable. The truth is, the woman you're attracted to has been in control of dozens of interactions before you. She's played the game. She's seen the patterns. She knows when a man is trying too hard. And most of the time, she's bored before the third date. But when she meets a man who doesn't fit the mold, who feels like a mystery but also like a rock, she starts to surrender without knowing why. She thinks she's in control, until she finds herself wondering what you're thinking at night, until she realizes she's checking her phone for your name, until she starts dressing differently before seeing you, until she becomes more emotionally honest, more raw, more invested, without you ever asking her to be. And that's the paradox of control. You don't take it. You create the conditions where she gives it to you willingly. Because deep down, every woman wants to lose control with the right man. And this is where everything becomes clear. She thought she had it all figured out, thought she was in control, that you were just another guy, predictable, easy to win, easy to read. She thought she could guide the dynamic, pull the strings, and stay 2 steps ahead like she always does. But without realizing it, she was already playing your game, already dancing to your rhythm, already caught in your frame. You didn't have to force it. You didn't have to prove anything. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You just held your ground. And in that stillness, in that silence, in that subtle unpredictability, she felt it. That pull, that intrigue, that desire. Not because you took control, but because you created the space where she gave it to you, voluntarily, subconsciously, completely. That's the real power in seduction. It's not loud. It's not aggressive. It's invisible. It's the man who doesn't flinch. The man who doesn't need validation. The man who leads with presence, not persuasion. And if you've been watching this video and something clicked inside you, if something in your gut told you, this is the missing piece, then congratulations. You've already separated yourself from the crowd. Because most men will never understand this. They'll keep chasing. They'll keep performing. They'll keep giving their power away, one message, one compliment, one approval-seeking behavior at a time. But not you. If you want to truly master this, if you want women to chase you, think about you, crave you, not because you begged for it, but because you engineered the emotional experience that made it inevitable, then don't just watch, engage, drop a comment below. Tell me what part hit you the hardest. Share a moment when you felt the power shift in your favor, or when you realized you were giving it away without knowing. And if you have a friend who's always stuck in the loop, who keeps being too nice, too available, too reactive, send him this video. It might be the thing that finally wakes him up. And if this resonated with you, if you want more, subscribe, hit that bell. Because what's coming next is even deeper. We're just scratching the surface. The next videos will show you how to weaponize silence, how to become emotionally untouchable, how to make her feel you in her body without even laying a hand on her. And most importantly, share this. If we want more men stepping into this kind of power, we need to spread the word. Thanks for watching. This is just the beginning. Now go out there and let her think she's in control while you're the one writing the story.